in today's time, how important it is for a startup or any person for that matter who is there into entrepreneurship or business, or he's trying to sell a product, right? How important is content generation as you feel?
I think very important. What the internet has done is basically remove the barrier of us reaching out to people through an indirect mechanism. We can all be on any platform. We can take a camera, we can take our phones, and we can start creating content and interact directly with our consumer. And I think that's one of the biggest things a founder does have, right? So the idea is that content is the way that you reach out to people. Internet has made it democratized to for you to reach out directly, and if you're not leveraging that completely, you're missing out for an opportunity to be authentic, to be the voice of your brand, and to actually market yourself in the best possible manner. And that's your biggest strength as a founder. So I think a lot of founder led brands will come up, and content creation will be at the core of most new age companies, be it B2B, B2C, or any other kind for that matter.
For what startup or business you work right now?
I invest in startups myself along with running my own podcast. It's called Indian Silicon Valley. So we call the investment arm Indian Silicon Valley Capital, and we call the podcast Indian Silicon Valley Podcast. We've been doing that for actually about 3.5 years, and evolved as a Zoom first episode to now a video first podcast. So that's been very fascinating. I used to work at AngelList for about 3 years, and that gave me an insight to how early stage startups work, how investments get done. And that was my foray into the investment side. And now we've invested about 25-30 companies myself, where we aggregate capital from our network and invest in emerging startups from across the country, actually across sectors.
So today's event is focused towards startup ecosystem, right?
Yes.
So as you talk to many startups through your broadcast, so what is the very common or regular challenge each and every startup is facing these days? So not in terms of their core challenge as a
Right.
business, but as a common challenge which needs to be addressed on a general approach.
I think one thing that is very common is starting a company these days has become really simplified because of the tools that are available, because of the ecosystem that is there. However, scaling one or reaching product market fit, which is usually known as that point after which you've been able to achieve scale, is usually the difficult piece. So I think we'll go when funding dries, which has been the season across the last 4 or 5 quarters. You also start questioning how much of this is sustainable. So I think common challenges will be scaling up, ensuring that you are profitable, and ensuring that you don't run out of money in times when there is a drying up of funding, because that then becomes difficult to sustain and you will eventually fall out of business, and that is not something we need. We need more successes in the ecosystem. While failures are bound to happen, I think founders need to just be careful and aware about how they will eventually scale, hit PMF, and not burn money, and build in a sustainable way. So that's the challenge, sustainable building, I guess.
So, do you have any story to tell when we say that the burnout or burning model has been very fascinating these days? Most people go through that and experience some disasters when it comes to running out of cash or any other challenges for that matter. So, do you have any story with you? Because I'm very concerned about you interacting with the fellow entrepreneurs or any person who has been interacting with you. So, any story do you have wherein people are not burning more?
Yeah.
But then have made good amount of scale in the business, and as far as investments have been raised at a very particular time based out of their requirement, but then they have saved their investment for future
Sure.
this thing.
There is one of my very close mentors is the founder of a company called Trachn, Tracxn. They are now a public company. They have been building for the better part of the last 10-12 years. And I keep hearing stories from him, and I've seen him across the last 4 years build in such an inspiring manner, not burn a lot of capital, take his company public, and continue growing well. I think that these are the kind of stories we further need, and this is the inspiration we need to take. Sometimes we talk a lot about things that get glamorized. I think media, unfortunately, will only glamorize things around failures or things which are controversial in nature, but that is not the norm. I do think, of course, there are some bad actors, but they are not examples, right? I do think we should take inspiration from Nykaa, Zomato, Policy Bazaar, Traction. These are the kind of companies that we aspire to build. And as an investor in the ecosystem, I am always excited by founders who take inspiration from the right set of things in the ecosystem, and hopefully we can all keep growing in that manner. But this is the closest example I've been able to see firsthand, and I'm very, very grateful to him to share very interesting learnings across the journey with me.
Here I happen to meet a very early stage startups or
Yeah.
founders who have been entrepreneurs for the first time. So there they have this mindset of raising funds because they see this gag all
Globally,
over
yeah.
around, and the only constant topic they think about is funding.
Funding.
So what I and you are an investor as well, right? You look after investing in startups. So as an investor, what particular things you are expecting from a new generation, newly generated entrepreneur? Like,
Yeah, for me, I think entrepreneurship is such a difficult journey. I look out for true purpose, right? Is this a person who can persevere for 10, 12, 15 years? And how do you gauge that, right? Very often, when founders are of the opinion that they want to take up starting up because of, generating wealth, or because of quick money, or because of funding, right? I don't think those are the right reasons, and that is usually not the best signal for me. I want to invest in founders who are in it for the long run, who are very obsessed with the customer, and who really want to build because of no external factors but because of internal factors, and who will survive in the long run. So I'm usually looking out for these factors. Beyond that, of course, market sizing is always something that we look at. But I think if startups get built by people, you have to really understand human motivation well. And I try to spend more time than usual with founders to understand what they are really saying, because in a pitch you only get to hear the internal, external objective actually.
objective, correct.
But over dinner, over spending more time, you actually understand the intrinsic motivation, and that is more important to understand, in my opinion. It does seem a very, very qualitative in nature and still does not guarantee success, but we're in the business of optimizing for success, right? And there are definitely higher odds of a founder succeeding when they are more internally driven to build a company versus when they are driven by just monetary gains.
Monetary gains, absolutely. So one story I can relate here is, as you told, right? So in the pitch deck or in the first meeting, we only glance out of very objectifying thoughts out of it. So in
Correct.
our experience, we also happened to meet our first investor and mentor.
Oh,
So it was through after the officers when we were discussing him. So then that he got to know that we are at the right way or right path or something. So I can relate it to that. I'm just recalling it because I'm trying to put this question across to a new gen entrepreneur, right? So he should make sure that technically also it has been worked out.
Correct.
With me personally, it has been worked out in that
100%,
way.
100%.
So I'm just trying to validate that thought of you.
Yeah.
At the same time, it was really nice talking to you, Will.
Likewise.
Absolutely pleasure. I would like to definitely like to connect you and think of connecting you on through your podcast and
100%.
make my presence there and explore more through your initiatives.
No, pleasure
Thank
talking
you
to
so
you.
much.
Pleasure talking to you.
Thank you
Thank you
so
for
much.
having me.